क्लीं कैवल्य क्लीं कैवल्य क्लीं कैवल्य क्लीं कैवल्य
Sai Ram, Namaste, and welcome to Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam for the Kaivalya Marga class, the special series that we have been offering, we have been privileged to offer. Today is the 9th night of these holy nights. Let us begin this session, the satsang, with 3 Oms. For the last 8 nights, I have been sharing lessons that I've learned from my own experiences, the insights that I have got, and I continue to receive through these kind of awakenings of the Mother Goddess, of the little self that begins to explode into this awareness of the higher self. So to me, and I'm sure many of you watching this, if not all, will agree that spiritual path is not a path of, it's not a fantasy. It is not, and I say this because there are some modern psychological approaches which condemn this kind of spirituality, saying this is an escapism, it's an escapist philosophy. But I guess it comes from when one sits back behind a desk and theorizes about these, listens to these as a theory, then yes, it does sound like an escapist philosophy into an alternate dimension and so on. But like I said, to me, and I'm sure most of you will agree, that this is not an alternate dimension. Neither is it a fantasy. I know, and this is something I can never deny in the worst of circumstances, that within me, I cannot deny that within me lies a dimension of consciousness which is extremely beautiful, far more real, far more stable, far more profound, far more connecting. And when I say connecting, it's like expanding the self. The sense of I begins to feel much larger. And that dimension is within me, far more than what I experience with my senses on an everyday basis. This is the lesson I learned from these spiritual experiences. This is what draws me back to my spiritual practice. This is what draws me back to meditation. This is what draws me back to my sadhana. It is not to please a god outside of me. It is not to please some gods in some other dimensions. Because when you are exposed to those dimensions, you will understand what I am telling you now is none of those beings, energies, if you will, are waiting to be pleased, are waiting to be worshipped. They are waiting to serve you because they love you. It's like a mother taking care of a baby in the cradle. The mother is the one who gave birth to the baby, right? The mother is the one who should get respect. The mother is the one who should be worshipped by that baby at this point. Because the baby doesn't know anything and the mother knows everything, right? But what happens? Just look at what has happened there. The baby just sits or lies in the cradle and wails when he or she is hungry. The mother comes running, feeds the baby. The mother clothes the baby. The mother runs. Mother is waiting to serve the baby. But at that point, does she think, I am the one who's serving the baby? I should be the one getting respect. Now, what is this? This baby is demanding respect. No, right? It doesn't work like that. It is out of love. Love is what makes the mother go and clean the baby and do everything that you wouldn't expect a creator to do. Who's the creator of the baby? The mother. The parent, I mean, right? Mother, father. So the father bends down and plays with the baby. The father becomes a donkey and the baby rides a donkey. So take that, understand that relationship and apply it to God. The reason why I say it is because when we listen to these stories, when we listen to others' experiences, and when I talk about Murugan and I talk about Karthik Bhagwan and I talk about Shiva or Mother Goddess and things like that, my experience has been that they are waiting to serve you. That in that dimension there is only love. It's not beings like the way you and I imagine. They will assume the form you want to give them. But those energy principles are waiting to serve you because the I in us, this is like a little child wanting to explore the world but not knowing what to do. So that is what I mean. I mean very strongly from my heart when I say that there are no gods waiting out there to be pleased, and definitely no gods waiting to get angry if you do a particular chant wrong, or if you, instead of offering red kumkum, it's slightly orange, or if you, instead of offering vibhuti, you don't have sacred ash in your home, you offer something else. None of that matters. Seriously. All rituals are meant to symbolize your conversation with the divine. There are traditions established, and these are very powerful and lovely traditions, and therefore it's easy to follow a tradition. Why reinvent a wheel? For example, the Sri Chakra worship. They say do kumkum. Kumkuma, for me, it reminds me of red. Red, deep red. Deep red reminds me of the deep red rising sun, which is the opening of the Anahata Chakra. So I like to do with the kumkum. That's all. Now, if it is not there, what would I do? I'm not going to fret and fume or go out of my way to get kumkum thinking, my God, Devi will get angry, something will bad to happen to me. If you get into that frame of mindset, there is no spirituality there. There is zero spirituality because fear takes over, and fear causes a whole host of other things. Then what happens? You start following somebody else's footprints, and that's why it becomes dogmatic, it becomes ritualistic, it becomes a religion, an institution. This is how it should be done. Oh, how dare you do this? This is how it should be done. Kundalini yoga, when you begin to experience these dimensions and these divinities firsthand, you will know, and it will break your mind from all these bondages. This is why Baba would often say, it is bhava alone that matters, nothing else that matters. Bhava alone that matters, bhava alone that matters. Even in Sri Chakra worship, even in Sri Devi worship, there is a Bhavano Upanishad. Ultimately, it merges into everything being internalized. Okay, so that's one side of the picture. The other side of the picture is because we don't want to take all that trouble of sitting there, having a shower, sitting and doing all that, we quote unquote become philosophical. We say, oh, and Bhavana Upanishad is there, Bhava is important. Why do all that then? Why not just simply internalize? If that feeling comes out of immense devotion and an awakening and an intelligence gives it to you, go by that. But if it is laziness, and if it is a sense of, I don't have time to do all that, I am not interested in doing all that, so I will stick to this philosophy of God doesn't want all this. Simply sit back, chant His name, and do all that. Why all this struggling with holding your breath and breathing left nostril, right nostril? Now, if you take that attitude, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I just feel that when we begin to slight these paths because of inconvenience, the word is inconvenience, not laziness or anything like that. It is some things become inconvenient. You put it aside, you build a philosophy to convince yourself that no, this is all not required. So if it is out of convenience that you adopt a philosophy of Advaita, God is in me, I am God, then why do all this? Just carry on with life, right? If that is a matter of convenience, then there is no awakening there. There is no awakening there. In other words, there is no personal experience that gives me the enrichment, the empowerment, the sense of deep peace, the sense of connection with the divine, the joy, the exhilaration, the ananda, and all of that. The idea of real expansion, all of that doesn't happen because out of convenience I've adopted a philosophy. So that is why I try and take care to not over philosophize or over to make these satsangs and these sessions more scholarly in nature. I don't want to do that. I want to talk out of experience, like somebody who has trekked a path and come, and he's just telling you what all he experienced. That's all it is, right? When you go, it may not be as cloudy or as sunny as when he went, so your experience will change a little bit. And you might come and say, I don't know where you saw the peacocks. I never saw any peacocks, but hey, listen, I saw a tiger. So each one goes to this safari and comes back and tells a different story, slightly different story, but in principle they're all the same. But that comes out of experience, right? So if you say, but why are you struggling in that safari, going there, risking your life? I sit at home and watch it on television. It's all there, very good. Why struggle all that? So then what happens? You get to see it, but you can't experience it. You only get to see it on television. You can't smell the air. You can't smell the exhilaration, the excitement of being in the safari, in the park, right? In the trek, whatever that is, in the pilgrimage, if you will. So why am I saying this as I begin this? Is because as we come to a close of these 9 days, and tomorrow I'll try and summarize all of what we learned to the best extent I can, because we have to delve into each of these again in detail later on as we come back to this. It's like layers, peel. Every time we come back to it, we'll open a different layer and go deep into that. Why I'm saying all of this is because do not mistake philosophy, scholarship to be the real spiritual path. Real spiritual path, the way I learned it, the way Baba taught me, is doing sadhana. You have to engage mind, body, and the spirit. You have to engage in an activity, in the sadhana. You have to bring about the transformation real. Then your sense of reality undergoes a transformation. Then you are transported to these dimensions, or in other words, your consciousness begins to expand. You're not going from one place to another. You're becoming aware of the other worlds, other lokas that exist in a more subtle manner. You become more and more subtly aware of these lokas that exist. The more subtle they are, the more vaster they are. Like the elements, the earth it's physical, water is a little more, air and space is just, it goes subtler, it becomes more vast because it's very subtle. You can't put a boundary to it. Same thing with all these lokas. Each center is a loka. Loka means what? A loka means world. A world, a universe by itself. So there are 7 universes above, 7 universes below. And so each universe is a reality, a dimension. Each one is into itself. right? So these are all layers that begin to reveal themselves. That revelation, that experience has to be firsthand. So don't philosophize, don't get caught into the philosophy. It's good to read, it's good to do research on the internet, it's good to listen to everyone. But then if you feel inspired, dive into your own practice. Let it be baby steps. We will follow 100 times, 1,000 times. We might spend a whole lifetime just trying it, and it's okay. But we will learn to walk that spiritual path because the mother is there looking over us, and she will awaken and come to your rescue. You won't fall off the cradle and crash and break your arm or leg. The baby will make sure you get the mother's attention. Okay, so let me come to today's talk. Today is on Rudra Granthi, and I know you're looking at Agna Chakra because there was something important I missed yesterday. Is my eye okay? I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I just need to. There is something weird about my eye. Well, that's what. The reason why I do these chroma green is because there is a sense of focus in our presentation, so I take trouble to do that. Okay, all right. I think we should be okay. All right. So the Agna Chakra, I missed something very important yesterday in the mudras. I don't know how it got missed, but I know we talked about Shirsasana, Bandhatrayas, Bhrumadhya Drishti. There is one beautiful mudra called the Kechari Mudra. Two mudras are very important for Agnya Chakra. Kechari Mudra, Kechari, it's very, very highly praised in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, in the Geranda Samhita, and all of that. Okay? Kechari Mudra. It is one mudra that will help open the Agnya Chakra, very simply put. Okay? Now, like I said, it's a technicality to it, and then slowly allow this mudra to become part of your meditations and everything. Allow it to gently come in. Okay? There's no danger to this at all. It's a very beautiful mudra. What does it do here? Now, Kechari, it's all about the mouth. With the tongue, you roll the tongue backwards as far back as you can, ideally when you're conscious. Afterwards, it just settles to the center of the palate, the roof of the mouth. The tip of your tongue touches the roof of your mouth. In other words, it tries to reach to the pineal gland and tickle it. Not tickle it, it actually wants to taste it. The tongue wants to taste it. Remember in Swadhisthana, I said there is a connection between the two. In Swadhisthana, the sense of taste, tongue, is very important because when the tongue experiences something, it determines the reality. Saying, I have experienced this. This is real. I can experience. That's why we keep going back to Swadhisthana. The consciousness begins to think that is our home. It settles down back there all the time. Because the tongue determines the reality of the experience. Why do you keep going back? Because your first-hand experience is that of the senses, and the king of the senses is the tongue. So tongue determines, because the tongue is the one that can taste objects. In other words, internalize that experience. Eyes can only see, right? Touch, you can only touch. It's all external. You feel and all that. That's external. But the tongue actually takes it within, and the whole body experiences that. So, all right, that is Swadhisthana down below, the level of reality on the senses. Now, when you go to these higher realities to pull the energy up, okay, the tongue wants to taste. That is why the Kechari Mudra was discovered and presented to us. The tongue wants to taste, but the tongue now tasting, the tongue doesn't go outside because that's where it goes to taste food. It doesn't go outside. The tongue goes inward and upward. So there are some very traditional Hatha Yoga schools I've only heard of. I'm not going to vouch for that or anything, where they actually cut the bottom of the tongue slowly over 6 months and release the tongue to go and lock itself up and all of that. So that is all really beyond. I've never experienced it. I've never went through that. I have no interest in going through that. I don't even think that's required. So what do you do in Kechari Mudra? You roll the tongue backwards Let the tip of your tongue touch the roof of the mouth. Close the mouth. And then, so what happens? You create space in the throat, and then you partially close the glottis and do the Ujjayi breath. The tip of the tongue begins to activate the brain centers. That is the power of Kechari Mudra. It begins to activate the pineal gland. When you learn to understand this, when you practice this, and when you begin to understand, and it starts becoming activated along with your mantras and meditation, it becomes well settled. You will be able to tickle, and I mean that metaphorically, you begin to tickle the pineal gland, and the middle of the roof of your mouth, pineal gland are all in one line, straight down. I use pineal gland as a reference for Agna Chakra. So the tongue going up is Kechari Mudra. It is very highly praised. It says there is no death, there is no rebirth, and there is no, and all of that. There's each mudra and each kriyas are praised so much. But it comes with tremendous amount of practice, accompanied with a lifestyle that supports it. Okay, I keep on saying that. Don't take this in isolation and say Kechari Mudra didn't do anything to me. There's so much more to it, right? But it's a very safe, very beautiful, very profound meditation. My meditation started going up in leaps and bounds when I started doing the Kechari Mudra. Okay? It starts going backwards. And begins to literally you'll begin to enjoy the nectar, if you will. Not in a physical sense, but in a very unique sense. Maybe some of you have already experienced that. So if you have, you can relate to that. So Kechari Mudra, tongue going back. There is nothing very complicated about it. So there are no different schools of thought teaching you different methods, except if you read across where they say cut the under part of your tongue and all. Please don't try any of those. So apart from that, you can read about it and simply get into that practice. We'll come back to it later if required, but it's a very simple thing. There's really nothing other than rolling your tongue backwards, almost as if you want to go into the nasal passage, right? Like that. Initially, there will be a struggle, push, and then it will settle down halfway, relaxed, and keep it folded up in your meditation. So if this mudra becomes loose, what will happen? Slowly, your consciousness, your one-pointedness will slowly come back down, and it'll come back to normal. In other words, the energy comes back down. So Kechari Mudra is what is really helps you to pull the energy up. It activates the Udhana Vayu. Udhana Vayu, which we talked about, we referred to a little bit in Vishuddha Chakra. Udhana Vayu is what connects you to the other dimensions. Udhana Vayu is the last Vayu that leaves the body and carries the jiva with it. So Udhana Vayu is that the rattle in the throat that you hear of a death person. It is considered, I believe. But that is the Udhana Vayu. The Udhana Vayu happens here. So in Kechari Mudra, the Udhana Vayu becomes active. The body becomes light, the body becomes energetic, all of that. So when you do your meditation practice, pranayama, when you want to sit quietly, just roll your tongue back, touch the roof of the mouth, and close your eyes. That's it. That's Kechari. Let the rest happen by itself. The body language is very powerful, right? The subconscious mind and the unconscious part of us understands that far better than our conscious thinking and all of that. Okay? So set that snowball in motion, if you will, in your practice. Include that into your practice. And the other mudra is, maybe it was destined to be taught on the 9th day. I don't know. I just, I blanked out yesterday when I was making these points. So Chin Mudra, the other mudra for Agnya is Chin Mudra, where the Atma joins. This joining is the center in this. The Bhru Madhya, this part is this joint here. where the Jiva joins the Paramatma. We talked about it in another video earlier. So, not as part of the series, but it's there somewhere. So you have the forefinger and the thumb. The thumb represents the Godhead. The forefinger represents. So this is Shakti and Shiva. They meet at this point. What is this point? The point is the Agna Chakra. Okay. By then, all these three gunas, in other words, all the five elements, which are ruled by these three gunas, right? If you go back to the early KM classes, where we talked of Sankhya, the entire creation and all of these, everything comes under the three gunas. So all of these are separated now. That means above this, Chin Mudra begins to happen. So Chin Mudra again raises your consciousness. Chin Mudra, Kechari Mudra. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that I cover these two as part of, bring them into your meditation, because this is very popular, the Chin Mudra. Do not think that this is by any means unimportant. This is a very easy and yet the most powerful among all mudras. Okay, in Sri Chakra and all, we learn so many other mudras. There are so many other mudras which are very complicated. But this is the most powerful mudra, Chin Mudra, because it helps you to internalize every experience and actually begins to open the door to this other dimension of reality. That reality exists here, right? It's like radio waves. It's all over, but now you're able to tune into these radio stations and suddenly, oh wow, yes, I can hear it so crystal clear. In other words, I can see it, I can experience it. You enter that, literally. You enter that. It's like a virtual reality, but it is more real than this. This becomes then a virtual reality. All right. So Kechari Mudra and Chin Mudra is something you may want to consider including in your practice. Okay. Now we'll go to Rudra Granthi. Rudra Granthi, the less said, the better. Rudra Granthi, when I talked about the fear yesterday, and when we had talked about Granthis earlier, Granthis are knots. Knots prevent the energy from flowing. In this particular case, Rudra Granthi is what I call the Kaivalya knot. It prevents Kaivalya from happening. Because after that, in Sahasrara, it is like I've said. This is again the way I experienced it. There is no other way for me to explain this. Kaivalya is when you go into Sahasrara and Sahasrara begins to open, you get to taste Sahasrara here and there a little bit, right? That exhilarations and all of that. But then it comes back because a knot is, like I said earlier, it allows a little bit of flow. But when this knot opens up fully and you flow, when the river merges into the ocean, there's no coming back as a river at that point. That's a big cycle that has to be completed. It will come back as another river somewhere else, some other part of the world maybe, but not at this same river. This identity is gone, right? So that moment of emergence of the river into the ocean, there is a lot of commotion there, because the ocean is coming in, the river is trying to go here. It's like a big confluence, if you say. There's a tremendous energy there. That's why places like these become important spiritual centers. Anywhere where there is river merging into the ocean becomes a very powerful spiritual center. It is a portal, literally a portal where you can naturally meditate. Why? Because the inner being in you appreciates the nature's one small river, identifying now it's with the ocean. So that's a nature's way. It's a body language of nature, that the inner being in you, your consciousness, the very source in you connects to, understands that symbolism. It's not a conscious thing. If you are aware of it consciously like this through satsangs like these, then it's fine. Even not, if you just close your eyes and sit there, that commotion, that confluence, if you will, that creates a tense, superficially tense atmosphere of salt water, fresh water, waves coming in this way. But that actually brings peace, because you know you're going home. You know you're going home. So the Kaivalya knot is that which prevents this from happening completely. It just little bit of the river water seeps into the sea. That's once in a while, and the bliss comes. But the knot prevents the identity from merging into the Sahasrara. That's why it's called Sahasrara. The beyond Rudra Granthi is called Sahasrara. I cannot even talk about it because I've not even experienced it. Rudra Granthi, I know I've experienced because it was the one that brought me back. So I want to talk from that perspective. But beyond that, if I start talking about Sahasrara, it is just I'll be talking out of imagination. So I don't want to lead you in any wrong, give you wrong ideas or limited ideas based on my imagination. Rudra Granthi is the Kaivalya knot. And this knot is in the Vijnanamaya Kosha. I said earlier, Granthis are in the Manomaya Kosha, but this Granthi is in the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Why am I saying this in the Vijnana? This is an inference for me, okay? I've inferred this. I'll tell you why. Why is this not in the Vijnanamaya Kosha and not in the Manomaya Kosha? Why? Because Manomaya Kosha ends with Vishuddha Chakra. After this, there is no more mind. Any experience is beyond this point. When you go into, like, that's why I said it's not fantasy, it's not a matter of belief and all of that, right? Because those are things where we take somebody else's experience and try to bring it into our mind. That we are trying to put God into a picture, we are trying to fit an elephant into a bottle. When we try to do that, then we are trying to fit the experience of the Agna Chakra inside the mind. The mind exists as long as these elements exist: space, air, fire, water, and earth. These 5 elements give creation to the 5 senses of action and 5 senses of perception. Correct? And the mind deals with these senses, these elements. Beyond that, the mind doesn't exist. You experience that even in deep sleep. Where is the mind? Mind doesn't exist because none of the senses exist. So there itself, the mind is gone. So if this Granthi is happening here, if there is something that is pulling you back, that is the next most subtle kosha, the intuitive kosha. Vijnanamaya kosha is commonly understood as, because it's Vijnana, we say intelligence. And we usually think intelligence is a scientific, logical, analytical mind. This is not that. This Vijnanamaya kosha is the intuitive mind. Dhiyo yona prachodya. This is buddhi. Buddhi that is the where, like I said earlier, in the last class or the previous class, where the mind from the caterpillar, it begins to become a butterfly. Now it's a butterfly. It's no longer a caterpillar beyond this. So how can you call this butterfly a caterpillar? You can say it was a caterpillar, but now you can't call it, right? So whatever the butterfly is experiencing is the experience of the butterfly now. It is in the same manner. The Hansa, the swan that we talked about, the Rajahansa, it becomes a Rajahansa. The mind becomes Rajahansa. The mind from here becomes Indra. Indra. The same Indra who lies dormant in the Swadhisthana. That's why there is connection between Swadhisthana and all of these centers, but especially Swadhisthana and Agna Chakra. Because Indra now becomes completely in charge. He is the Devata of the mind, the core. He awakens. Not of the mind, sorry. He is the Devata, he is the God of all gods, right? What is the energy there is? The mind blossoms into Rajahamsa. Rajahamsa, king among Hamsas, becomes like the Indra energy. That that energy is what gets blocked now. So Rudra Granthi is you're coming face to face with the source of everything, Shiva. It's not easy. So the most subtlest of knot comes into the most subtlest of the koshas, Vijnanamaya kosha. Beyond that, there is Ananda and union, right? So that is a different thing. So in this knot, what happens is the eye preserves itself. The eye preserves itself. So Sundar is still alive because of the knot. If the knot fully opens, then Sundar ceases to exist. Now you might say, what does you mean? Do you mean physically or spiritually? I don't know the answer to that. Like I said, I have not experienced Sahasrara. But it is my belief that if I let go, then the body itself will not last long, because there'll be no urge to come back and be the river. There's no river to come back to. You have become the ocean. The consciousness is gone. The body will just be. This is my limited understanding at this point. So a question came to me as to what happens to, what do you think is Ramana Maharishi and Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and all these enlightened souls, didn't they experience Sahasrara? I don't know the answer to that. I wish I can speak for them. But I can infer from my experience. The way I have understood that is they retain that temptation to merge in and hold themselves there and share the knowledge of what they experience from there. That itself is an amazing experience. That itself is you it's like, it's cricket commentaries. These commentators have I believe they have a box where you can see the entire thing going on, and they give detailed versions of exactly where the ball is and what's an off spin going. For those of you who understand cricket, that analogy comes to me right now, so I'm just using it. So he gives you the exact commentary that's going on, or what is happening. Why? Because of his that unique spot that he has from which you can see the game. It's the same thing with baseball. It's the same thing with American football and so on. These commentators, the people who are giving you the running commentary, what's going on. So even if you're not seeing it, if you're listening to it, in Shravana alone, you are able to visualize exactly what they're talking, and you're with them. Are they playing the game? No. Are they in that basketball court or in the middle of all of them? No, they're not. They're in a safe position. But they have that unique ability to watch, and because of the experience of being there, they have a unique ability to understand, appreciate what is going on, and they transfer their knowledge to us. So when we listen, we watch a game through the commentator's voice. Literally, his sound vibrations create a reality for us, and then we say, wow, this game was amazing thanks to the commentator. So you have people who have become famous commentators in cricket or any other field, right? So that is what the Agna Chakra is. This is my understanding, where these teachers, enlightened teachers, when they teach us, they have that unique position to be able to share. This is my understanding. I could be completely wrong, but I'm just sharing what I believe at this point. There are exceptions, though, with Sai Baba and masters like that. The Avatara Purushas are exceptions, where they can experience, be the ultimate, and yet be normal. Now, how Sai Baba did it, I can never even begin to understand. But I knew he was far more than claiming to get enlightened. It is not a state he reached at that point. He was from that place. It is like he's playing the game and he's giving the commentary. He is the bowler, he is the batsman, he is the wicket keeper, he is the ball, he is the bat, he is the stumps, he is the ground, he is the field, he is the people watching, he is everything, and he's giving you also the commentary. How that happens, I have no idea. But that is what I believe is the energy of Rama, Krishna, and Avatara Purushas. That, of course, is my belief. And that belief for me comes from having watched, having lived with a master such as Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba. His perspectives, the way he would approach a situation is completely beyond your wildest imagination. Completely. The way he would approach a topic would be, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of it? Wow, what is that coming? Where is it coming from? He would approach it like that. And from a point of view where there is zero fear, zero limitations. It's like an explosion of idea that happens there. A whole new vision is exploded right into your consciousness. Say, do this. And your first reaction will be, no, how is it possible? It's not possible. Like, for example, free education. Free, let's start. So those kind of things are all only possible from that point of view. Um, so I've experienced where Rudra Granthi pulls me back, and so I can talk from their point of view. Where is the Rudra Granthi? Just above the Agna Chakra. Just above the Agna Chakra. Just above the Agna Chakra. Okay. So the effects of Rudra Granthi, um, this knot is more or less tight knot in most of us. There are other knots which prevent even us going beyond that knot, right? For the knot here, you can look down on the knot, but for the knot here, in your own mind, in your own visualizations, you have to look up in your visualizations. Okay, you have to look up for that knot. So everything, therefore, below, almost every experience that we experience, every limitation that we experience is because of this knot. This knot is a king of the knot that controls all the other knots. By divine, that's why there is element of divine grace. If divine grace comes and opens this knot, everything opens. The whole energy explodes. So that comes only with divine grace. In the Annamaya Kosha, in the physical body, there is an element of aging that happens, which we consider as normal. But if you go to a yogi like a Rishi Agastya or Tirumular or Bhogar, these are all Siddha Purushas, Siddha yogis, they would say, what are you talking? You can live as long as you want. If you go to Babaji in the Himalayas, he'll say, just dematerialize your atoms, rematerialize it again. So that is all. We don't understand that because we can't even experience that. We can't even know what they're talking about because of Rudra Granthi, because of that knot preventing our consciousness to go beyond. And so we accept aging as normal. So one of the effects of Rudra Granthi is, first of all, normal aging itself is what we say normal, is abnormal in a yogic term. But anything related to aging, therefore, like loss of memory, Alzheimer's, if it all sends in before of this an extreme case, it's all about Rudra Granthi. So Rudra Granthi causes aging in general. When this knot begins to get loose and the energy begins to flow up and down, then the aging is much slowed down. And perhaps when the yogi becomes, perhaps, I say perhaps, because Baba would say, if you're not experienced, if you're not a role model, don't talk about it, right? So I can't talk about these things from first-hand experience. These are all inferences. Perhaps if the knot opens and little bit, not fully opens, you're gone, right? So when it opens a little more and your energy flows even more, then it begins to reflect, because every deepest spiritual experience has to find its reflection in your, eventually find its reflection in matter. Matters, what is matter? Your physical body. That is my experience. Okay, so it has to find its way down. So the body begins to reflect that supreme principle shining through the body. So then the great divine beings like Babaji, Hanuman, they are Chiranjeevis. Chiranjeevis means what? Eternal. They have kept that perfect balance there. And they are staying there for the benefit of mankind and so on, for as long as they want. Okay? So that is even higher than the rishis and maharishis we know now. So that is there. That is, very few Chiranjeevis do that. Agastya is one of them. Tirumular is one of them. Bhogar is one of them. Hanuman is one of them. These are all names of Siddha Purushas and yogis. And of course, Babaji of the Himalayas, whom Paramse Yogananda made very famous, is one of them. So these are beings waiting to guide you and protect you and take you up the path. So you can directly tune into those. So they are, it is like that I is still in them, that so they can retain that for the entire, this entire 4 yugas, if you wish. The entire cycle of creation, they can retain themselves there. And there could be many, many more like this. So what happens is, when you are struggling in your spirituality, then that energy, when we talk of grace, their energy comes and helps you. They help you. That is why it is Nandi is one more yogi like that. Nandi is also considered a bull in front of Shiva, but he is a yogi who's a Chiranjeevi, who's learned from Shiva, and he is there. He's there in a dimension waiting to guide. And they guide in a very subtle manner, deep into, they'll go and trigger something, and that change will happen. So that, because that eye is so subtle at that level. Okay. So anyway, where was I was where the agelessness of these yogis are a sign of that Rudra Granthi, completely under their control. They control how much of that knot should open and close. All right. In the Pranamaya Kosha, Udhana Vayu, because of that knot, the Udhana Vayu, the freedom of that Udhana Vayu to experience the other dimensions become limited because of that knot. Okay, so Udhana Vayu is, like I said, the Vayu that is used during meditation. So your Ujjayi Pranayama, the sound of the Soham, the sound that you generate begins to awaken that Udhana Vayu. Udhana Vayu begins to draw your consciousness up, okay, and expand. So that begins, that happens, and then suddenly comes down because of Rudra Granthi. The effect of Rudra Granthis are all very subtle, okay? Unlike the effects of these, where I can say, okay, hypertension, blood pressure of these, or digestive problems and all of that are all related to these other Granthis. Here it's very subtle and far more deeper and far more significant, but very subtle in our bodies and minds. So look at the mind, Manomaya Kosha, what happens? In Manomaya Kosha, there is that fear that is in the mind, right? Now, as the mind is turning itself and going up, the block brings it back here. So I use Manomaya Kosha, the effect of that. The knot is now in Vijnanamaya Kosha. But when the mind begins, the caterpillar begins to go as a butterfly. You see, when the caterpillar, there is a very nice thing I read recently, and perhaps you come across it. Emperor moth. A person wrote it very well as an analogy. The emperor moth coming out of the cocoon. It's a big struggle, and it's almost like this emperor moth is not going to come out of that cocoon. He or she is not going to be able to make it. He cannot come out because he's trying to squeeze and not able to make it. But in that squeezing, all the fluids that will hold him back is actually being released, and he's going to be free. So that transformation of mind into swan is nice to hear, but it is perhaps the most difficult because of Rudra Granthi, that subtle Granthi that keeps putting it back. That fear of annihilation. I was corrected by Maya yesterday when I said annihilation. The annihilation. If I spelled it correct, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't even know. Anyway, annihilation. That fear, and the fear of Sundar losing and the butterfly opening, that fear is real. It comes out of nowhere. Have I conquered it? If you ask me, I don't know the answer to that. Okay? But I'm now I can go and rest in Agna Chakra. I know my chakra is active, and it becomes active with divine grace at moments where I can just be there, completely lose myself in ecstasy. And I'm happy being there. Like I said, I'm happy. Is that happiness a sign of fear in disguise? I don't know. But that happiness is so beautiful and so real, I'm going to enjoy that for many lifetimes. But I know that fear was real because I experienced that. Then lack of clarity in visions comes because in your mind. So now the mind is wanting to burst forth, right? When you're not clear, what is the purpose of my life? What is the mission of my life? And all that clarity doesn't come. Then it is that Rudra Granthi affects these two chakras, Vishuddha Chakra and Agnya Chakra, correct? Vishnu Granthi affects Anahata Chakra, Manipura Chakra, and Brahma Granthi affects Swadhisthana and Mooladhara. So after every two chakras, there is a Granthi. Okay, so this is a very important part. This transformation itself is being stopped by this Granthi. So the effect of that Granthi is felt lower, and eventually throughout, right down. So clarity of visions, clarity of purpose in life, clarity of, let's say you have a talent, but the talent is not fully expressing itself. After a point, you're like, I don't know. I just lose concentration. I can't hold the brush, for example, so steady as it needs to be, or I can't sing that note the way they are giving that clarity of that in that it's not coming. My mind blanks out. All of that is because of effects of Rudra Granthi. Consider that. And your inability to go beyond senses. That is beyond this. If the mind is not going, it is a power of Rudra Granthi. Like, what are you talking? I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea. You can't look down upon such people. It's an effect of Rudra Granthi in them. There is a reason why consciousness has chosen to be like that. So that is the inability to go beyond senses. If you talk to children, they will believe anything because their energies are very freely flowing. For them also Rudra Granthi exists. But then it is very subtle. It becomes tighter and tighter because the other knots become tighter as we condition them to behave in a certain way, and we condition them with our sense of reality. They borrow it, they make it theirs, and so they live a completely a life filled with inceptions that we have planted in their mind. So they borrow our reality and create it and say this is also real. But children, they find it very easy to go into these dimensions. Very easy. Like I've met people who said when they were little, they would talk to little flowers and talk to the fairies in those flowers. For them, it was real as a child. To me, that speaks of the spirituality that was so awakened in that child. Okay? So that little girl or boy can go back into that childhood and experience that again. It is there. That experience is there. That reality is there, stored in this lifetime. So it's much easier for them to go and rediscover that from the Mooladhara and create the path all the way up. There is a lot that happens inside of us. There are worlds, like I said, happens inside of us. It's such a beautiful path to discovering this journey. I have, I know these are not planned well. Well, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to take up that topic tomorrow as part of the summary. Tomorrow may be a little longer session than 1 hour. Let's see how it goes. But I don't want to start that now with 10 minutes remaining. I could end this session a little earlier. But the point here is when you listen to Rudra Granthi, when you listen to Agna Chakra, if those are not part of your experiences, don't worry. Don't be anxious and eager, and you can be eager, I'm sorry, but don't create anxiety and stress. Why am I not experiencing? Why are this not happening? Who am I? Oh gosh, am I doing something wrong? Why this is not happening? Why that is not happening? This over analysis and this over interpretation of every single experience that happens to us begins to really cloud our thinking. It's like you're going on a drive with your family and your 5-year-old is in the back seat, and he just starts asking question, Mom, why is this red tree? Mom, why is that tree yellow in color if it's an autumn drive you're going? And he starts asking first you're answering, and then with every single thing that he sees he goes on asking questions. Why am I seeing this? Why is this like this? Why is that like that? Why is that cloud in this shape? After a while you're like, I don't know what to tell you. All right, what do you tell the 5-year-old? Just sit back, enjoy. Just enjoy. So don't be like a 5-year-old where every single experience has to be analyzed and interpreted and understood. It doesn't work that way. Experiences come and go. You just enjoy the journey. Just come back to your practice, and sometimes the experiences are pleasant, sometimes they're unpleasant. Take them with the same attitude and go into the practice. So don't get caught in, on the one side, becoming philosophical and scholarly about this. Oh, so and so said this, you said this, I made a table, I made a chart, and all that is good as homework and for your own learning. If that is how you approach certain things, that's fine. But don't get stuck with that, because then now you are going to do research as to who is more right and who is more wrong without even having a first-hand experience of any of those, whether A said this or by B said that. Because everyone talks from their own personal experience, even especially in Kundalini Yoga, especially in experience of meditation. Even if that was written 500 years ago, like I said, in Shat Chakra Nirupana, is a book written by one person, his experience, his visualization, his path. That is not the path and the only path. That is one experience. You got to understand that. I am not demeaning that by any means. I'm just saying because it has become so popular, everybody who talks about chakras goes back to that same book. So you know everything, therefore, is perhaps borrowed from that. It could have related to their own experience, but is borrowed from that. I am grateful that I was not exposed to it in Puttaparthi because I didn't have an access to that. And therefore, it gave me a chance to explore this on my own. And I distinctly remember Appaya, this devotee of Baba who used to come Puttaparthi, and I used to talk to him and he would guide me. He never recommended even once a Shat Chakra Nirupana or anything. It doesn't mean I'm not recommending. Please don't. I'm just sharing my experience. Okay. So he never recommended any of those books. He said, just go inside, pray, talk. Uh, he talked about the deities. He said, release these deities and let them guide you. That's all it was. Lot more details and all of that began to happen automatically on its own. The revelations came. So that is the beauty. Just let it be. And like I said, these petals, Baba just interpreted them. Okay, what is 16? 16 is this. Take it. That's a starting point. Just start. Okay, 16, this means this to me. And therefore, I'm going to take 16 means this. Or 12 means this. I'm going to take that. I will come back to that, understanding why I took 12 in the heart chakra as a 12 zodiac signs, 16 as a 16 phases in the moon. It's important for us to for us to learn from that point of view. If I have to teach in Kundalini Yoga, which I will, it'll be from my experience, and my experience comes from an understanding, deeper understanding in the last 15, 18 years, the deeper understanding of Vedic astrology, the opening of the planets and the grahas in my consciousness, all of that has deepened my practice and exploded my practice to even greater levels, even more divine levels of consciousness expanding. So when I talk about consciousness expansion, it comes from a deep experience. That's why even in Shavasana, I close my eyes, I put myself into a semi-trance, and I start talking, because for me it's like I'm reliving that experience. I'm going with you, connecting with you into your spirit, and together we are experiencing that. That is how I do it. And so I will share with that some of that tomorrow as to how this whole scope of chakras and understanding the petals, dimensions, and layers and all of that falls in place. It may not be entirely clear. It will never be until you begin to experience it yourself. But I have started taking these baby steps. Thank you for your patience. And so I will continue in these baby steps, and I'll allow the divine to guide me to share these experiences, so that what is my goal in this? I just want you to know that these dimensions are real. That's all. That's the only goal. Because then that will motivate you to explore these dimensions and go into it prepared to explore it for lifetimes to come. With that preparedness. If it happens in one lifetime, it happens in 1 week, that is divine grace. Take it. But be prepared to say that the next many lifetimes I'm ready to explore these dimensions. Because this is what life is all about. Not how much money I make in the bank, because none of that is something I'm going to take with me when the time comes for me to breathe my last. Where have I come from? Where am I going? Am I always going to be limited with the body? Am I going to go into this nothingness? And if that is true also, then what am I doing struggling? And if I'm going to leave everything behind and go, then what is it why am I even struggling? Right? But when you begin to understand through the spiritual path that what I'm taking is with how my experiences, my memories I take with me, I continue a life beyond the body. How do I know that? How do I know that? How will I know that? That is what the spiritual path is. When you begin to realize you are the jiva at this point, not the Atma Paramatma, just the jiva, when you begin to realize you're the river and not the pond, when the pond water flows into the river or the pond dries up, you know the water underneath connects to the river and the river continues to flow. You identify yourself with the river. That in itself is a great understanding. And that gives a purpose for the river to continue flowing, seeking its source. Where is my source? Where did I come from? I want to go back. So the ocean dried up, evaporated into water vapor, comes down as rain, flows as a river back into the ocean. So the river finds a source back and then perhaps repeats again. We don't know that. That part I don't know. Because that merging into the river for me is the idea at this point is that liberation that we are talking about, that Vedanta talks about, that Vedas talk about, that the ultimate experience of what Patanjali says in his book, Tada Drishtu Swarupe Avasthanam, the Purusha draws everything into himself. In other words, Shiva dissolves the whole creation into himself and goes into Shiva Tattva. And that I am consciousness just remains I am. There is no coming back, going, there's no future, there's nothing like that, right? That level, it is beyond thought, beyond everything. So, but before all of that, there are so many layers to that. Okay. So that of understanding that we are much more than this body itself is a great breakthrough. But that understanding comes not out of philosophy. You get a glimpse of it. Like I said, watching on TV, National Geographic is different from being in the forest facing the tiger. So when you experience something like that, it changes completely. Otherwise, it becomes a philosophy, entertaining to some extent. Don't let spirituality be a matter of convenience. If something is inconvenient, doesn't mean it's not necessary. Perhaps it is necessary. A spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. That was a song I heard in Mary Poppins many, many years ago as she sang that. So, what is your spoonful of sugar that will help this divine medicine go down? Maybe it is the name of God. Maybe it is your divine name and form of your choice, of your divine deity. Maybe it is namasmarana. Maybe it's bhajan. Maybe it's yoga. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's just going out and serving the poor and the needy. Maybe it's all of these. But get into that. Get into that practice and allow the divinity to blossom. Thank you for being with me for 9 days. Tomorrow we'll try and summarize all of this and put a little more matters in perspective so that leaves us room for further growth and further learning in the classes to come. There is a lot for me to share, and I'm sharing this only, like I said, with the hope and with a fervent prayer that you reinstall that faith that within you lies this Disneyland called divinity. And it's through your effort and divine grace that once again you can unlock your consciousness and release it into this divine world of infinite freedom, expansion, and selfless, unconditional love. Let's end this class with one Om, 3 Shantis. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.